to see that they have ideas and they are capable of doing them as well. To conclude, I also believe that in summary, we need financing, we need workshops, and we need training in order for guidance and to have a clear vision of what to take and how to step forward with these initiatives.
That is so important. You know, we have been talking all the time that the young people are the future, and we really have to invest in the young people. So your suggestions of ensuring that we build the capacity in the youth and that we provide startup funding and support the application process, I think that's critical. And I'm sure our partners here are listening today, and so we hope that that will be realized. So this was a good start to the conversation. I think all of you were very eloquent in responding to the questions. I can see that you really thought it through. So we want to take it a little further, and in the interest of time, I think maybe we can ask a question to two of you, and then my co-moderator, CEO Williams, will ask another question. So I want to ask maybe Thomas and Miles, how can the international community more effectively support Belize to achieve the SDGs? And if you could sum it up in maybe a minute and a half, I would appreciate that. So it's how can the international community more effectively support Belize to achieve the SDGs?
Yes, so Belize, our main problem is finance, and we said before that we are classified as an upper middle income country, so we don't really have that much access to concessionary financing. So perhaps there could be lobbying for maybe, like they said before, they could provide finance because we're a more vulnerable country. So they could advocate for inclusive financial criteria for Belize.
Excellent. Thomas?
So as my colleague and Minister Fonseca said, Belize does face constraints due to being classified as a upper middle income country, but this doesn't take into account all the variables, the different unique vulnerabilities that we face as a nation. This could be from our climate to simply poverty. And we need to have a reevaluation of the way financial institutions classify which nations should receive support when it comes to that. And as Minister Fonseca had said, we regard it as a small island developing state. And as you know, we do face significantly unique challenges here in the Caribbean. And one that I've researched, one solution, is green bonds. So these bonds are a type of fixed income investment specifically designed to finance projects with positive environmental impacts, such as renewable energy initiatives and climate-resilient infrastructure. Unlike traditional bonds, green bonds come with a clear commitment from the issuer to use the proceeds to fund environmentally sustainable projects. So I do believe that we need to take a look at green bonds and zero in on Belize's unique situation.
I'm sure that CEO Williams's antenna were just going up. Weren't they?
Well, I was checking to see if you have a job lined up already, because we could definitely have some conversation. But yes, indeed, those are the kind of unique financial instruments that we need to look at as a country. The type of these payment for ecosystem services, things like carbon credits, now things of biodiversity credits, the green bonds, and some of these opportunities are indeed very important, particularly for countries like us who need to raise the finance to address sustainable development and climate change. So, yeah, very, very interesting position. Ms. Bell, if I could change the conversation
Absolutely.
a little bit,
Right ahead.
because I think this part of the conversation we often have less, and I think it's critical, again, particularly for us as we look at project implementation, policy implementation, and then going forward when we talk about integration, equality. And so to Mr. Rikenya, I want to pose a question on gender equality. Do you think that gender equality can be achieved in our lifetime? And what are some actions that we can take now in order to move in that direction in achieving gender equality?
Well, I honestly believe that it is very much possible within our lifetime, within everyone's lifetime here, that we can move in the direction of gender equality. And one of the main things that we should and need to do is pass the legislations that help protect everyone equally. So it's a very poignant topic because I do work in the chemistry field at University of Belize, and that is, I would say, one of the main sectors that I have not the expertise but the viewpoint to speak on. In there, we do push for the inclusion of gender equality standards, and I can proudly say this, that the two lab techs at the University of Belize, Ms. Zayda Leon and Ms. Chelsea Herrera, are very good examples of how gender equality can be implemented because they are the two head lab techs of one of the most acclaimed labs in Belize for environmental research and protective management research area. Also, I would like to highlight the story of Ms. Karina Kal, one of the first head brewers at Bowen and Bowen. She is one of my colleagues, and we can definitely see that within our lifetime, gender equality is possible. It very much is, and it should be one of our main goals to achieve. There is also legislation that Honorable Fonseca has mentioned, the Disabilities Act, to help protect members of our vulnerable communities. That should be pushed more. Those agendas should be pushed more because, again, we are in Belize. What makes us Belizean is the fact that we are in Belize. It doesn't matter if you are a man, woman, or girl, man or child. We are all Belizean, so we should all have an equal opportunity for progress and also to have our voices heard. Like I said, this discussion offers a very good launch-off point for that to happen. So I deem that that is one of our main things that we need to do. Continue having the discussion, push for the legislations to be passed, and have them very much have the impact that they need to have in the near future and for the future generations to come. So I very much believe it is possible that within my lifetime, I will see gender equality in Belize.
Thanks very much for that response. I'll come back once I give the floor to Ms. Miriam. The same question. What are your thoughts?
Personally, I think that globally there are many challenges when we talk about achieving gender equality because we talk about cultural, implementations. There are traditional beliefs and there are religious beliefs and so forth that actually weigh down on the progress of gender equality. So I personally don't think I will be able to see it, but I do realize that we are taking the right steps into achieving gender equality in Belize. Particularly, I see that it is evident that Belize understands that we need to address these challenges that we face, especially when it comes to gender equality. We can see that in the National Women's Commission as well as the revised National Gender Policy from 2024 to 2030, I believe. And it fosters for gender equity and also ends discrimination for women and girls. And however, I see that there is a very huge problem and an obstacle that we need to overcome when it comes to the highest level of decision making for our country, which is the cabinet, that consists of predominantly men. I think we need to advocate and encourage women to be involved in decision making and politics for our country because this is the highest level of representation of how we will go and actually strive for our country and continue making decisions that will be beneficial for every person. As my peer, he said as earlier that we're all Belizeans and we all will have to face the decisions that they will make. On the other side, when it comes to healthcare and so forth, I think that we see it is predominantly women. I think we also need to advocate for men to take on the healthcare roles, especially nurses, because they are capable of doing it, and I'm sure that everyone knows that as well. And women are capable of doing it, so I'm sure that we all can take that step forward and better care for the health of our Belizeans in our country. So by addressing aspects such as I stated before, healthcare or in higher government politics, I think that these are the right steps to achieving not only gender equality in Belize specifically, but also around the world.
So ladies and gentlemen, exactly, give a round of applause. Did I not say that the future of Belize is very bright?
You did, you did.
And I'm sure, Miriam, you are going to see gender equality in your lives, in your lifetime. You have spoken to some of it. I think we may have a few minutes for one or two questions from the audience for our panelists. If there are any questions, please raise your hand and someone will take the microphone to you. Please identify the panelists that you would like to pose your question to.
Hi, good morning. My question is directed to Miriam. I would like to ask you, well, if you were Prime Minister of Belize today, at this hour, at this moment, with everybody, I want to know what changes would you make to our beautiful country of Belize?
Well, coming from the South, I feel very, very biased because I really see that there is a lack of, economic growth at that area. I think that we should encourage economic growth in both the rural and urban areas because as Belize's multi-dimensional poverty index states that poverty is higher in the rural areas with 39.9% versus 8.3% in the urban areas. So as Prime Minister, I would probably implement policies and accessible education, healthcare, and overall development for these rural areas that have difficulty in doing so. So yes, that would be my first move for that question. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you, Madam Prime Minister. So we have the floor for maybe one more question. Okay, no? You guys got away.
So I think this was a very good panel discussion and a very good start to this youth dialogue today. And I really want to congratulate all of you. I can see the interest. I can see the future. And the selection of this panel, I think, was very, very good. If we may sum up some of the discussions, certainly to achieve the SDGs and to ensure sustainable development, many of you spoke to the issues of financing. Many of you spoke to the importance of engaging the youth, listening to your voices. And in other sectors with the disabled, with the adolescents, they always say, nothing for us without us. And so if we're talking about the future, we have to continue to engage the youth, the future of this country in the dialogue. Many of you spoke about legislation, the importance of having legislation, of having policies in place and implementing them, and not only that, monitoring the implementation to ensure that we are on the right track to ensure a sustainable development. We spoke about looking at future technology, the digital transformation, the artificial intelligence, access to technology, ensuring that we have widespread access to technology. It is also important that, you mentioned new priorities, and I think Miriam alluded to some of it as well, our health sector. We have to take a holistic approach in terms of individuals, because you can't have development without good health. You can't have development without a healthy population, a well-educated and a healthy population. So those were some of the areas that I took away, and I'm sure I want to leave my co-moderator with his area, climate change and the financing. So over to you in terms of some of your takeaways.
Thanks, Ms. Bell. I thought you were doing an excellent job, man. I could just say thank you, but no, I thought that I would have to repeat your first point in terms of the engagement. I very much agree with your point, Mr. Rekenia, that there has to be a constant avenue for engagement of young people. It can't be a one-off. I also would like to take the opportunity to inform you that the Ministry of Sustainable Development is having Youth Week, Youth Climate Week at the end of August. It's a space that we're trying to create to do just that, no? Where we engage the young people in the priority topics for COP this year and get feedback so that when we go out and represent the voice of Belizeans, the youth constituency, the women constituency, the indigenous community constituency is represented. And so we certainly, I agree that that is important. I like the point on digital transformation and AI. I see CEO Mahia's, her antennas going up, and the minister, because I think that's been a critical push of the Ministry of Science and Technology, and certainly there are opportunities there. On the environment side, as I said, these financial instruments, like as we demonstrated as a country, the blue bonds, and now the opportunities in green bonds, and some of those areas are going to be critical financing opportunities that we need to tap into as a country in order to drive some of the financing, the capital we need to invest in our nationally determined contributions and some of the other priorities, linking back to the climate resilient infrastructure and some of the other climate smart initiatives that we, in agriculture, and some of the critical areas that we need to address to ensure that as a country we're able to build the resilience and the adaptive capacity relative to climate change. Ms. Miriam, you said a lot, but I mean, given the feedback from the Ms. Prime Minister, let's go in Madam Prime Minister. So I do hope that is, taking on your advice to the young women of this summit, that you're going to see the opportunity that you have as a young woman to be part of the decision-making process, and you own and embrace that opportunity that you have, and you share that among your colleagues. That's going to be continuing to be important. It's first within ourselves, right? And I'm pretty sure what the character that you demonstrate, I mean, it's really in the trajectory to being one of our leaders in this country. So with that, I think I come to the
Yes, with that, I think we can close this first panel discussion, and I want to thank all our panelists. I think you did an excellent job, and I'm sure the conversations will continue. So thank you very much, and good luck in your studies. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Panel 1, for sparking a vital conversation and giving us much to consider when it comes to climate, resilience, and financing. To segue to our second panel, we will be talking about science, technology, innovation, and digital cooperation. Did you know that that these fields are shaping our future at an unprecedented pace? Guiding us through this discussion is Ms. Diane Mejia, CEO in the Ministry of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology, along with Ms. Alison Parker, UNICEF representative in Belize. Please give them a warm welcome of applause. We will have students from the University of Belize. Ms. Palacio is a second-year student studying English. Mr. Palacio. Oh, sorry. It's the gender stated in my head, I guess that's why. From Gillen University, Mr. Delvin is a fourth-year student studying computer science and education. From the University of the West Indies Global Campus, Ms. Dorado is a second-year student studying psychology, a minor in human resource management. And from St. John's Junior College, Mr. Edward is a second-year student studying cybersecurity. Now I hand over to CEO Mejia.
Good morning, everyone. I don't know, guys, we have a hard act to follow. Right? You guys were just so awesome at the couch talk thing. I don't know, Renata, where are you? Your job might be in jeopardy too. Look out. But welcome to this part of our discussion, our youth dialogue this morning. And I'm really excited to be here. I'm very grateful for this opportunity, and I'm looking forward to following in the footsteps of our colleagues just now and letting everyone have a chance to really hear from you. So you want to welcome everybody, my able co-moderator?
Absolutely. I think it's a pleasure for me to be here. One of the areas we really are excited about is hearing the voices of young people. So I think this is a great opportunity, a great space for you to really express yourself and, like the first group, challenge us in some of the areas where we think we should do better. So welcome.
So our topic is science, technology, innovation, and digital cooperation. And we had an awesome introduction just now as one of the previous panelists touched on some of this. I hear you guys at Galen have been talking about this sort of thing, huh? Yeah. So if we could just jump right in this morning, I'm wondering about whether, maybe Edward, since you're the cybersecurity gonna be specialist soon, if we start with you, and can you tell us a little bit about how you think science and technology can help us to tackle the environmental changes, such as biodiversity loss, and help us to build resilience to climate change? I'm trying to segue from just now talking about the climate change impacts, right? How do you think science and technology can help us?
Well, as a young, proud Belizean myself, I've seen over the few months how environmental challenges have impacted Belize. Of course, with utilizing science and technology, we can have a sustainable development plan. Firstly, I would want to introduce the technological innovations like utilizing GIS, Geographical Information Systems, artificial intelligence, drones, or even satellite imagery. Throughout the time when the fires were happening in Belize, the Belize Meteorological Service utilized the satellite imagery to make Belizeans aware of how forest fires were across the country. And this not only led to destructions, but deployment also from the Governor General myself as a soldier in the Belize Defense Force. I was deployed down south, having to combat the fires. By facing this, we saw the first Belize Coast Guard sent out the drone squadron, and they came back with the knowledge of having to help monitor the ecosystem using drones. By doing this, we can also implement, secondly, renewable energy. With the load shedding that have been occurring across the country, we have definitely seen the impact that we had. Some of us probably didn't have electricity throughout the night for about 2 hours. So by implementing solar energy, wind, or hydro energy, specifically in Belize, due to our subtropical nation, we can definitely let our carbon footprint decrease and also make affordability for energy consumption within our country. Lastly, I want to talk about community empowerment. By us doing community empowerment, especially in the underserved community and areas, we can help by assisting them. For example, how many communities within the rurals do have access to water, clean, purified water? By them learning water purification processes, this can greatly impact them. And also, by looking at the agricultural sector, farmers, they have the ability to help us grow and sustain our nation. So by bringing them aboard as a community, as a rural area, not only from the urban and the rural areas, but having the entire country implement what we have, especially in our area where we are a subtropical nation, can greatly impact us. And it can greatly have us adapt and grow economically. So, looking at the SDG 13 and 15, it had stated that biotechnology crucial for economic and the ecosystem restoration. So this is very important and can be seen in Belize. So I want to say, by having us utilize technological innovations, firstly, renewable energy consumptions and community empowerment, we can tackle the environmental changes that we need in Belize.
Oh, that was great. And thank you for your service to our country, Edward. We really appreciate.
I think after that, we have to absorb that comprehensive response. CEOs, we're going to hand over to these young people very soon.
I don't know, Minister, I think after this you might be able to find my replacement quite easily.
Yeah, I want to talk to Yannicka. And what I want to share is, what are some of the barriers in Belize to access digital technology? We've had a brilliant presentation just now, looking at drones, looking at all of these evolving, dynamically evolving tools that we can use to better our economy, our people, our ecosystem. What are the barriers that you as a young people have identified in terms of digital technology in Belize?
Okay, so some barriers that I definitely think about, and what my colleagues mentioned in the first panel and what Mr. Nakasio just really elaborated on, would definitely be access in rural areas and these underdeveloped areas, especially down south. I'm pretty sure they don't have, if they don't have water, then how will they have internet? Right, so that's one thing that we could look at. Another barrier would definitely be limited infrastructure for these types of initiatives. And the cost of the services, because internet kind of high. So the more gigs or megs or whatever, the higher the cost. And if we can't buy food, how will we pay for internet? We also want to look at, the people have being able to use it. Are we providing them with the training or the basic education, at least? My granny personally, she doesn't really know to use her cell phone. So how will she be able to use these technologies, right? So she'll always be bugging me, Ems, please help me with this, help me with that. So I know that now the youth, we're more inclined to these sort of stuff, but the older people, the CEOs, everyone else, not to mash any toes, but yeah, it's new. We're all learning, and while the younger generation might, be more inclined and they want to learn more, the older people will stick to their books and, the old ways of doing things, right? That's what I'm trying to say. So
we got you, Yannicka. We're not.
I don't want to mash any toes.
Shots were fired. Stones were thrown. But we will survive.
No, we're growing,
resilient.
we're learning. My sister is more, she uses AI way more than I do, and I'm like, I'm supposed to be the one to know how to use these things. She has me out, so I'm part of those old people.
No.
But definitely, so the biggest one would definitely be the rural areas and the underdevelopment that we face those barriers in. And I think that once we're able to get into those communities, we could really see some changes, because we have a lot of intelligent people, but they just need to have access to those resources so that we could really pull out that potential from within them.
You make a lot of sense, even even though I've got to get over my age issues. I'm just kidding. No, but it's true. We cannot deny the challenges that face the barriers that exist to some of our country, some of areas of our country geographically, and then to some of our people in accessing digital technology. But I think before we really push a little bit more to that, one of the other questions that we have is, because we can't escape, everything has a positive and a negative side, right? What are some of the negative impacts? What concerns you most? I'm going to hand this one over to Delvin. What concerns you most about the negative impact of technology and digitalization? Delvin?
As you can see, running through my notes and taking out the questions that have already been asked, because I have a lot to share. My name is Delvin Centino. I'm a Gillen University student. I am a teacher at a community institution, and I am a tech-focused entrepreneur. But my most important identity is a Belizean who wants to see their country thrive. Now, to answer this question, I believe we need to establish the definition of technology, as it is subjected to intense international debates. My definition, according to Merriam-Webster, technology is the application of scientific knowledge for practical purposes. To expand on this perspective, a hammer is a tool. We don't call a hammer good or bad. A mirror is a tool. We don't call a mirror good or bad. And a computer is a tool. You cannot call a computer good or bad. So I posit that there is no negative impact inherent to technology. And I know this will be contested, so I'd like to offer some counterpoints. Let's start with job displacement, first of all. This occurs when technology advancement replaces human labor, leading to job losses. To this I say that assembly line workers will become our AI and machine learning engineers. Our welders will become our robotic engineers. Our quality control inspectors will become our automation specialists. Telemarketers, digital marketing specialists, bookkeepers into data scientists, and customer sales representatives will become our digital experience designers. Number two, the widening digital divide, especially in rural areas. This refers to the increasing gap between those who have access to technology and those who do not. To this I say that a rising tide lifts all boats. We will see economic growth and job creation both globally and rurally. We will see enhanced education and skill development in the form of mobile learning centers and remote education programs. Telemedicine, increased access to healthcare services in rural areas. We can go on to mention financial inclusion, agricultural advancements, and even community building as well. And finally, I would be remiss not to mention the environmental impact in the form of lead, mercury, cadmium, and other flame retardants. But to this I say we have eco-friendly alternatives to these technologies in the form of smart grids, LED lighting, solar, wind, biofuel, and generally greener alternatives. And Belize can also invest in our very own e-waste management recycling center, because currently we're shipping these e-waste internationally to get them disposed of. Now, the path to technological progress introduces both challenges and opportunities. Technology is about trial and error, I must acknowledge this. But in the words of Thomas Edison, I have not failed, I have just found 10,000 ways it won't work. So, if I could end with one statement, I would say this. I firmly believe that technology and digitalization are inherently neutral. The true challenge arises from how they are used, whether through intentional misuse or a lack of adequate foresight. Thank you.
I think this is amazing, really. Sometimes, I'm sure, I think, Yannicka, you mentioned the intergenerational capacity to absorb this evolving context. You see the way I had to phrase it, right? To, understand this evolving context, but there's an exciting time ahead of us, and there's great opportunity to bridge the inequities and some of the gaps that we have seen from previous generations. I wouldn't mention which ones.
If I could just add there, one of the things that is difficult for me, it's a challenge, and I don't know if there's anyone else in the audience who might relate to this, but we're faced so often with what seems to be, overwhelming problems and challenges, and we so often think of, we see the difficulties, and we don't always look positively towards trying to find the solutions. So I really appreciate what you said just now, Delvin, because it's important for us to remember what Edison said about, knowing 10,000 ways it won't work. Sometimes you have to look at it that way. And we've got to be really mindful, I think, of the practical realities that we face. A tool is a tool is a tool. How do we use it? And so that's an important reminder for all of us. So thanks for that.
Okay, I think it serves as a good segue to our fourth question and to you. How can Belizean young people and future generations be better prepared to take full advantage of the benefits of science, technology, innovation, and digitalization? I think this serves as a powerful segue from what we've had from
This one is for you, Ere.
Oh, you're definitely keeping me on my toes because we're jumping from this question to the next. I think that one of the most important things that we would look towards is having youth being a part of the events that the government is behind. You have these type of things such as the Olympiad, where you have robotics, mathematics, and coding, and all these different things, where if we could ensure that our youth voice is heard so that we could be a part of it, that's a very big thing that I see. And the fact that we have Belize being the first country to make robotics an official sport, it's something that's very important. And so to have us behind that would be very important, to take pride, especially when you have people who pursue your studies. You also need to try and supplement that with technology competent subjects from coding. I know I might not be a coder or anything, but I try to look into editing, video editing, so that could help me out in my own video presentations. And you also have initiatives today that exist that we could be a part of. You have the eConnect centers, where you have as an important initiative, you have the Digital Connect centers, where you have citizens and entrepreneurs from areas with less internet to access. So as students, we have our community service hours, so why not make that a part of it? Because I might be in English, where I'm not going to be able to help you with technology specifically. But I would say all fields of study have something to offer when it comes to bringing something to the table. I wouldn't say that I'm going to Okay. I wouldn't say that as an English major, everyone needs to be breaking down poetry or reading prose, but in the terms of how technology could help people with reading, young people, the youngest people, when it comes to learning to read in the first place, I find that it can offer a very personalized and customizable experience, but not just for young people, but for people with disabilities as well, with audiobooks, as well as just increasing enjoyment for people who don't like reading on themselves, but just to listen. I know when I'm washing the dishes or out and about, it's easier to just have something playing that I could listen to. So I find that that's some of the ways that we can make it a more involved endeavor as young people, not just sitting back, because I find that making youth work alongside with other youths, because it's a very fast-changing field, I believe, technology. You could be 1 year ahead and so many things can change. So I find that these are some of the initiatives that we could be a part of to make it a bit more involved.
That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that. I'll share with you all that one of the realities we faced at the Ministry of Education is when we started coming out of COVID, there was this overwhelming messaging coming, right? That we've got to use the internet. We've got to connect schools to the internet. We have to make sure that everyone has access to the internet. And so we worked toward that. But then we had to realize, we had to think about, okay, but what happens when teachers are struggling with how do you use the internet, which is the tool, right? How do they use it? And then when you get internet access into the schools for the teachers, where do you go from there? How do you make sure that there's a device to be used? And then when you get the devices there, what do they actually do with it? Are the teachers using the internet to say, here, take 20 minutes of tablet time so I could get a timeout myself? Or is it, I'm just going to show you a video? What do we do then? See, there's always a then what. And I think one of the wonderful things about listening to you all is we're reminded that young people are innately practical. We have to remember, I'm putting myself, C.O. Williams, I'm putting myself on the other side here. We need to remember all the time that we have to be practical too. It's not just theory, it's real. If you're going to be washing the dishes, which is a good thing, and listening to something, right? If you're in the classroom, how do you use that same sort of, you can wash the dishes and listen at the same time, not everybody can do that. How do you use these multifaceted skills and approaches that you have? How do we support teachers? How do we make sure that students have better learning experiences? You know, so I'm just thinking about these things as you talk, and grateful for you all that you're sharing them.
Absolutely. Two things that came to mind is the peer-to-peer you mentioned, you know, and how young people can really mobilize and move themselves around it. So I think we'll move to another question that I wanted to ask, and I think we wanted to come back to Edward, because I think you started off, and the question I want to offer, I think I want to hand it over to you, Diane, to post that.
So Edward, can you tell us, you sort of mentioned some of these things already, which is why we want to go back to it. Do you feel that we have any innovative approaches to development that Belize is using? You know, do you know of any innovations in tourism, health, agriculture, energy, waste management, citizen security, science, any of these sectors? You were really broad-based in your first answer, and you touched on a lot of things. So maybe if you could give us a little bit more information there from your perspective.
Sure. As Belize leads in sustainable development across the nation, I would first want to touch a very important topic, which is the Blue Bond. And to mention the Blue Bond, a lot of people may think across the nation that it has to deal with politics. When it was first mentioned nationwide, when it was read, they might see it came from the PUP. No. If you definitely go in depth in what the Blue Bond is actually about, the government had invested $364 million debt that they went through, which in exchange is for a nature swap. So what does this do? Basically, with this in depth that we went through, or we are through actually, we are trying to build the economy. It's basically like a gamble. But it's not any gamble. It's a gamble that will build Belize, making it very known for what we're being able to do now. To say a key note about that, we're actually the second country to actually started the Blue Bond. And it's one of the largest investment that Belize actually did. With this Blue Bond, we are able to protect the coral reefs, which is very important. We're also able to protect our forest reserve. So we're looking at the flora and fauna with this Blue Bond, and it's very interesting that the government did this. It's a smart initiative that they started. Moving on to forensic DNA, SGSC was a part of this DNA that was being implemented in partnership. And to lay more on what the DNA is doing with the technology, imagine you being accused of a crime across the country. By implementing a DNA database in the country, you're able to see right there that, you know, if you're at the crime scene, forensic lab come and they want to collect data and all the information from the crime scene, you're able to do some matching from the database, which using that technology will actually limit the amount of people who have been falsely accused across the country. So with the forensic DNA technology, it actually increased the crime fighting and integrates with Belize integral architecture. So looking at the last one I had previously mentioned, which was renewable energy, this is a very important one that needs to be explained. And to go more in depth with what the cane actually is, not only for sugar, not only for making sugar, but the bagasse from the cane can create a bagasse-fired cogeneration plant from the sugar. And with this, we can create more energy. So having to do what we would do, the reuse, recycle, reuse, reduce, and recycle, we can also look at what the cane farmers are doing and recycle the trash that they would consider trash. To energy, which will also help the country a lot in this. And I also want to say this project was done with the Belcogen and the SS Energy, and they also help to limit the amount of fossil fuel being utilized within the country. So as Belize go towards this e-commerce and all the different stuff that we're doing online and fighting for the less fossil fuels, we now have electric vehicles in the country. We have BL actually facilitating the power of the ability of us charging our vehicles across the country. We have the new bus, the electric bus that they're actually trying in the country to see how it works. So all these things that the government have already implemented. It's just to go at a larger scale. And it's stuff that have been utilized by also the Belcogen, which was very important, that this is actually something that I found unique, using science to convert from the trash, from the sugarcane into energy. And to do this at a larger scale, we can actually create a section across the country to actually convert this energy and utilize it so it's stored for our country instead of having all the load shedding. So to conclude with this, all these innovations does drive sustainable development across the country, and definitely it shares advances while learning from global projects. Not to say only that Belize is leading, but Belize also need to learn from our first world countries, because adapting from what the first world countries are doing, we are a third world country. What the first world countries won't work in Belize, so our innovations have to be like different from what they're doing to adapt to our environment. So to conclude it, that by implementing the Blue Bond more and actually explaining more what the Blue Bond is and using forensic DNA technology and renewable energy, we can also fight with these innovations that we have in Belize and make it at a larger scale.
Thank you. Can I ask an education question? So, and any of you can answer this, right? So Edward talked just now about different approaches that he sees happening in Belize. Talked about the blue bonds, talked about the forensic database, making energy from sugarcane, electric vehicles coming in. Right now, you have an amazing opportunity because the Minister of Education is sitting right there. Or about me, or about him. What advice or what suggestions or what recommendations can you all give us that maybe we should be thinking about right now to implement? What are there policy changes we should be implementing in schools? Are there subjects we should be teaching? Are there ways we should be teaching that we're not? What can we do right now in primary schools, in secondary schools, to encourage more of this innovation or to prepare our young people to support these innovative approaches that are starting?
So I would want to take this question on. Looking at how I also teach at high school also, and looking at competency-based education. When I first got into the competency-based, when they were explaining that it's more student-centered, teaching information technology, it was nothing changing because it's hands-on. We teach inside a lab. But looking at competition that the Public Utilities Commission held, which would be the web development or the Raspberry Pi competitions, these are very innovative competitions that actually help students to look at how we can help combat in different problems or solve the different problems that cripple Belize. I would say cripple because there are a lot of stuff that make our nation have to look at where our youths can actually help. It's not only about decision making, it's about innovation. And I would want to go back to a project that was mentioned at this PUC when they did the competition, the web development. And I believe on the previous panel, they mentioned about how, my colleague mentioned about how they would say if you're good in English or you would help this person. They had this Tutor Me BZ website that was created by a set of students. And this website not only helped, but it was innovative because they used coding. As a set of students, they used coding to create a web application which had an entire database in the background, helping students across the country. So by implementing the innovation from PUC, they assisted the students in learning how to code. Well, they trained the teachers, and the teachers went and took it to the students. They showed them how to code, so you learn languages like HTML, PHP, JavaScript, SQL, all these different, and even Laravel. So looking at what the students did, it was unique because they allowed students to register online across the country. It was specifically built for the high school. And if I'm strong in math and you need help in math, if you go online, you're able to see that the persons who are strong in math and able to tutor, they're free. You're able to join and you're able to learn from that student. It's a peer-to-peer. So it helped with the competency base.
So what you're saying is that fostering more competitions like this and continuing to use competency-based education would be helpful. Yeah,
Definitely.
Delvin, you look like you wanted to jump in just now. I could see it.
I would like to offer a different perspective. In one of my previous questions that I don't have a chance to present, but I would like to present to you the data. Research backed by Galen University and a questionnaire involving 25 teachers nationwide, we saw that the typical computer lab, they have 2 on average. The typical has 19 computers, and of those 19 computers, 9 are working. A teacher has a class of 25 students, that means approximately 3 students to 1 computer. The 50 students come break and lunch want to use these exact same computers, and you have poor internet connectivity. So that's infrastructure issues, that's affordability issues because you need to buy new computers, and that's digital literacy because in a class of 25, only roughly 9 students know or confidently know how to turn on a computer. So we need to address these issues first of all. And another thing I believe, a more fundamental perspective is synergy. We need to add synergy. We have so many data floating around the ether in Belize that we're not compiling for our own benefits. You can go to any institution right now and ask them for a complete rundown of data, how many students dropped out, how many due to pregnancy, how many due to inability to afford the classes, and they can give you this data. But how do these different data correlate to each other? How many of these different issues affect that one student and led to that student dropping out of the institution? So synergy is something we have to address. We don't necessarily, of course, we need more funding. Always more funding. Money solves everything, trust me. But we need quality as well. We need the Wildlife Conservation Society drone program to work with the Belize Forestry Department drone programs and the Sesame drone programs as well. And the Paris Agreement by the Pew Charitable Foundation that Honorable mentioned, right? So all of these initiatives working together synergistically will lead to much more effective change. And that's just free change. Okay, thank you.
Said, thank you.
Maybe we'll go in for the final question because we really want to open the floor to the audience here. I'm sure there's a lot of interesting questions that are going to float in. And we just have about 10 minutes more to go. So I'll come back to you, Yanika. And I think this is a really important one, and I'll lace between the last 2 candidates as well. How can Belize enhance digital literacy and access to technology in a gender-inclusive manner among the youth, particularly in rural and underserved areas? I think you spoke to that very much at the start, and I want to loop it around to you. And now with the gender lens on, what do you think Belize can do to enhance this?
Well, I've worked with several NGOs before, and I feel as though they are the best organizations to be doing this kind of work because they focus on the communities and the impact. It doesn't matter if they have to be there for 50 days consecutively, they will be there. So I would definitely put the work for them to do because we don't think about people as data. We think about people as people. And we want to see how we are able to really impact these people to allow them to reach their full potential, right? So my colleague mentioned money solves everything, but I think that we also have to look at equipping people with the money can solve that. We have to look at our human resource first because the money will sit there. How will we use it, right? So that's definitely one. I also want us to start focusing more on our little girls, right? Because I'm only one young lady sitting here amongst 3 men, right? We have to see or foster that interest in our girls because no offense, boys, but we have big brains too, right? And we're able to do so much. But if we don't bring it to them, how will they know? How will they gain that interest? So NGOs are really good with doing these type of things because I've worked with 2. And we were able to really get into these communities, the rural communities where you have to put on your boots and you have to insect repellent. We get in there and we really do the work where, you know, some people wouldn't want to do that. Especially in rural communities, I think that we don't give them the credit that they deserve. They don't get the opportunities like this, right? So I definitely want to see more inclusion in that area because there isn't a lot. And if we want to look at gender equality and inclusivity, we have to remember that Belize is small but large, and we have to go from north to south. We can't just focus on, oh, we're going to hit Belize City, we're going to hit Belmopan. We have to remember the north, because a lot of people up there are super, super intelligent as well. And the cane farmers and all the cane industry on a whole, that's a big industry. And what are we doing to include these persons in these conversations that we're having right now, right? I also think that including more digital literacy and with the new STEAM Academy, I think that was a great step because we have, you know, the science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and the arts. My sister, she actually went to ITSAT and she loved every single second of it because it's something new and they get to do things that are hands-on. And I think that's something else that we really need to start looking at, hands-on training. Yes, a lot of people are book smart, but a lot of people are really, really good with their hands and their imaginations and the way that they'll put these things together. I myself, I'm not a creative person. So while it amazes me how other people could be creative, and I think we need to start highlighting that more. We need to get more vocational training, especially because, you know, we need all of these things to be included in education rather than only just sitting in front of a computer, reading a book, doing a test. Let's see how we could get all of these different components together to make a well-rounded education.
Thank you.
Eric, is there anything you wanted to add there before we?
I think on the side of what I had found is that, according to the International Telecommunications Unions, we have women occupying high-skill occupations globally, but when it comes to IT, where we find an absence when it comes to software development, engineering, technology, research, and academia. So that leaves like highest levels of policy even to where women are not as present. And even when they do find themselves in IT, they find themselves in junior or support roles rather than managerial roles. So just as a support, so what my colleague has said before, it's very important that we push to have not only our women but our girls to be able to get into IT, because you can't have half of your population and expect to make the right advancements in technology. We need to use all the Belizeans we can. So I find that that's where the voice of women are very important to bring to the table.
And it would be absolutely remiss of me at this point to say, if you have not done so yet, please visit 501academy.edu.bz, hashtag lead like a girl, make your pledge to join the campaign so that we can do just that, encourage girls to join ICT. Sorry, that was my little plug. Yeah. All right. Before we get the time's up signal, do we have any questions? Yes, we do.
Oh, the hands.
Minister has a question? Sorry. We had a couple hands up. Can you help me, Hero? There's somebody back
has
there
a mic?
too. One of the.
Okay, sorry, which hand? Okay.
Please say your name and address to which of the panelists you want to speak to. Thank you.
Morning, my name is Itana Balazir and I'm from the 37 Belmopan Phoenix Scout Group. I have a question for Edward. Sorry if I got your name. November 4, 2021, the Nature Conservancy closed the Transformation Belize Blue Bond for Ocean Conservation Agreement with the government of Belize, as you said. Yet the environmental assessment from time to time has been approved, which affects the same marine life protected under the Blue Bond Agreement. What is your suggestion to use technology to improve environmental assessment today's assessment to take into consideration to our international obligations?
A very interesting question. From the technological aspect, using cybersecurity, or in a whole, I would say IT. I would say we do have a lot of technology that can be utilized to remove those aspects that are damaging our resources. The remote drone that we use underwater, I'm not sure of the exact name, but we have the RVE, I believe that's the name if I'm not sure, the remote control vehicle. They usually utilize this under the water so that they could collect information and data. So looking at your aspect where you said that they have been declined even though the blue bond was approved and the climate change, they noticed that it's damaging our environment slowly. But looking slowly at what you mentioned, as much as it's been approved and the environment is being damaged, the purpose of the blue bond, like I mentioned, is more like a trial for nature, and it's a depth for nature swap. So by utilizing the drones specifically, which the Belize Coast Guard, they went on a training, they will help monitor our ecosystem mostly on the coast and in the waters and the marine life. And also looking at the aspect where you said that we're slowly damaging, like coral bleaching might be one of the effects. Coral bleaching, as looking at what is happening, like mentioned previously by one of my colleagues, first world countries have a big impact in why we suffer as third world countries or as a nation. And as you can see with Hurricane Beryl that actually came towards Belize, these are stuff that we cannot stop. These are natural disasters that will constantly come towards us. And looking at the environmental changes, the only way that we can combat these and look at what is happening is by us working together with the first world countries and letting them know. And if you remember when the Prime Minister of Barbados, when she had mentioned at one of the summit that she clearly said to the first world countries that you guys do not respect that you are damaging our ecosystem, and by you constantly using all the fossil fuels in the world, they had mentioned by at least, I believe 2050, they had mentioned that they would expect the entire world to move towards electric vehicles. If you notice, majority of the vehicles coming to Belize would be salvage vehicles, and I would want to mention this. America is slowly getting rid of all their vehicles that utilize fossil fuels because they're moving towards vehicles, electric vehicles. And one thing that Belize could do is by stopping that, by moving towards electric vehicles. So why would we take what the first world country is just giving to us and we use it? And that's one of the biggest concerns that I believe Belize has, is because we take what first world country take away from trash and not use anymore, and we take it into our environment, and that's what is damaging us. It's not what we are doing, it's what we're taking from the first world countries.
Thank you.
Okay, there is somebody here.
Hello, my name is Kelly Lee. I come from Sacred Heart Junior College. My question is targeted towards Delvin from Galen. Delvin, right? Okay. So during your question, you were asked about the negative impacts of technology and digitalization in our world. And towards the end of your segment, you said, and I quote, "Challenges arise from the misuse of technology." And I wholeheartedly agree with that. I love that sentiment. And though we cannot ignore the fact that technology has been used in warfare, and in the eyes of certain world leaders, it can be used as a means of protecting their people. For example, the creation of a certain technology called as bomb drones, where when they make impact with people, it could essentially kill them on impact and destroy anything and everything within their proximity. So if you were to be the next upcoming leader of Belize, or someone that could be like making the choices, right? I was just questioning, would you be interested in investing in such technology in a means of protect your people in the case that a foreign country wants to invade our country and possibly consider warfare on us? Or would you look for an alternate means of solution?
You're giving me a really hard question because you're putting me in the seat of a prime minister. We're on the brink of war, and now I have to decide: do we fight back or do we lay down? And I'm saying, of course, you look for other alternatives all the time. War is the absolutely last resort, if it should even be a resort, because given the history of technology, if you build something, you will use it. And we have yet to utilize our thermonuclear. We have utilized nuclear, but not our thermonuclear. That's the new and the biggest bombs we have. And we have not been utilizing them, but history shows that if we build it, we use it. And I believe that's an issue, and that's on a whole other global scale. As far as what I would do, I would turn the other cheek, because first of all, we're Belize. We're not supposed to be fighting anyone. We'll probably lose, given our military assets. And that's where the economics come in from Mr. Thomas Stewart, also of Galen University. He can tell me our budget and what we can afford in terms of war, and then I will make an informed decision going from there. Also, I would like to address the exploitation of our natural resources that the young lady just mentioned, because I was itching to answer that. And I would say the obvious answer, and the only answer, is to stop. That's the answer, stop. Because new research has shown that we have something called dark oxygen. Oxygen produced on the ocean floor because trees cannot account for all the oxygen we have in the atmosphere. And if we're exploiting our natural resources under the ocean, even before we can truly research this dark oxygen phenomena, then we need to stop, conduct that research, and see what happens. Then we can go back to digging these natural resources as planned. Thank you.
Yes, so my name is Tristan Rodriguez, and I actually have another question for Mr. Delvin. So over the past couple of years, I think we've all been witness to the rapid progression of technology and AI. And it's gotten to a point where I feel like in the coming future, the people, organizations, and nations that will find the most success are those that are better able to implement these things. And I'm not talking about 50 years into the future, I'm talking about 15, maybe 10 years into the future. So in light of that, I would like to know your stance in regards to implementing AI into school environments. Because as you stated, these things are tools. They are not inherently good or evil, but I do feel that the general consensus among schools is to sort of be against AI, right? I mean, just the most basic example, most schools completely ban ChatGPT, right? I think we can all attest to that. Do you think that this approach is hindering our students, and that maybe we should rather teach them how to properly use it to enhance ourselves rather than push against it?
Definitely. I am someone who my definition of technology is forged from an anthropological perspective, as well as a modern perspective and a future perspective. So my personal definition of technology is anything you utilize to make your life easier, whether that's the gel in your hair or the shoes on your feet. You don't type on those, but they're technology as well. And so I believe, to answer your question, make our own. Belize should make our own AI, and we can utilize features from these other AIs as well, because it's just borrowing code, and make it Belize-centric, and then utilize that in a framework whereby all of us type out our essay, and we just use the AI to smooth out our language. And that's it. That should be how we utilize AI, not the write my essay for me, please. Because then that's bad, because you go through 4 years without learning anything. So make our own AI, add a tag to it, whereby the students can utilize it maybe 10 times a month, and we can go from there, start with that piloting program, and then we further integrate AI into our education system. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you very much. I believe that we've come to the end of this panel. I think there has been... There's one more question?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I didn't see the hand up.
Hi, my name is Chloe Perfit, a proud member of the 37th Bomofan Phoenix School Group. I have a question for Yanika. How can we promote more interest in young people to pursue careers in science and technology?
Okay, so firstly, I think that in order to promote it, we need to know about it. And a lot of the times when I'm scrolling on social media, I've heard about professions that I've never heard about. So I think that instead of, you know, the the lawyer, accounting, business owner, person, stuff like that, we need to definitely get more majors in and start promoting other ways to use our education. For instance, so we could understand each other better, right? It never occurred to me that a chemist could work in a makeup brand. I don't know why. It never occurred to me. And I always wondered how people make makeup, right? So in order to know about these things to promote it, we really have to start looking at, you know, what would you want to do? The world is your oyster. You could really do anything that you want to do, especially for young ladies. I personally, I was never someone who was interested in IT. That was never my interest. My interest has always been in exactly what I'm doing now, advocacy, promoting, advocating more for gender equality and stuff like that. And so I am always at the forefront of really trying to encourage our girls to do more, because what I might not be interested in, you might be interested in, right? So I think that instead of just forcing you to be an accountant, maybe you want to be an IT specialist, maybe you want to do software engineering, but in order for us to promote, in order for you to know about these things so that we could promote it, we need to know, like, look at the different aspects within the realm of, okay, what is IT, right? What jobs are available in IT for you? Then we could look at what education you'll need to get into these atmospheres, right? Is that okay? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, good morning, everybody. Absolutely enjoying the panel discussions. Judine from the Ministry of Sustainable Development. I know we've had quite a lot of conversation around the use of technology and the benefits, and we've definitely seen, I've been around long enough to see the technological changes that have occurred. Back then, my computer used to be the library, encyclopedias and whatnot. So we've had quite a bit of discussion around this topic, but one of the things that I have not heard is how do we go about utilizing these different technological platforms safely. Luckily for me, growing up, I didn't have all of these social media platforms where you do have a lot of bullying occurring. And if it is that we're going to be promoting and utilizing technology to advance the way how we do conduct business, transform our educational sector, what would be your advice in terms of some of the policy changes that need to happen at that level to ensure that our young people that make up the majority of this country can safely utilize these platforms, and at what level, what are some of the changes that you need to include in the curriculum to ensure that we are utilizing these platforms safely. So we've spoken about the importance of digital literacy, but it's just, you know, stating it quite blankly, what are some of the key topics that we need to focus on? So I was going to direct my question to Mr. Delvin, but I noticed that everybody pretty much asked the same question of him, but I'll leave it open. So thank you.
I would say that I had some information here because I knew that when it came to the development of technology, we'd have to look at the legal side of it, and you'd have to acknowledge the Cybercrime Act. As of 2020, the Cybercrime Act became law, and it was the result of comprehensive research and analysis conducted by a cybersecurity task force, which included participation from multiple agencies. But to more speak on it personally, I would say that it's important that we're on the cutting edge, because we have the benefit and the potential as a country that as we implement technology, we've seen how that has affected other countries in the first world, and it's imperative that we don't make those mistakes repeat upon ourselves. And when it comes to schools and fighting back against, say, ChatGPT, as we've said, I've liked what you said about how we need to have our own versions of these things because it's a tool still. So the answer isn't to cover our eyes and stick our heads in the sand. It's a tool that's going to be used. And to end off, in my personal opinion, it's going to affect the curriculum and education because if you're asking your students questions that can be answered by ChatGPT, they're probably not reasonable questions to be asking anyway. We're looking for innovation and thought and new ways of thinking. So that's how I would end that off. Thank you.
I think that's a really powerful wrap up to the to the panel discussion. And I think, just to highlight a few pieces, there's been really interesting conversations about how do we evolve and make our curriculum and our educational system more relevant to the 21st century and employability. I think that's a fundamental takeaway for me. Are we going to do business as usual, or is this a tipping point for us to radically review where we are going or where we want to go and how do we get there together? And I think we've had really amazing suggestions on how can we move in this trajectory. I think another big takeaway is looking at bridging the inequities. How do we bridge the rural-urban divide, and also looking at intergenerational support? I think as a whole of nation approach, how do we make sure that every level is able to benefit? Because it's been done in other countries, despite some of the limitations from some of us, but still, I think we could still engage around that. One of the areas I really appreciated was the fact that you could look at the pros and cons of each of the suggestions that you were making. So, like there's no wrong answer, no right answer, but you've given a very comprehensive perspective as to what do we need to look at. It has difficulties, but this is where the world is moving. This is where everybody's going, and so how do we, in a safe way, move this process forward as well? One thing I want to share in terms of the safety and security that was raised is that UNICEF, together with the Ministry of Education and the Ministry of Public Utility, does have a child safeguarding component in the digital strategy of the country. So that is being mainstreamed, especially within the school. So how do we take that to scale, not just within learning institutions, but within the broader ecosystem to make sure that young people are protected? I think those are important tickets for me. Over to my able co-moderator.
Why, thank you, my friend. I join Ms. Parker in thanking you all for your contributions and affirming that your ability to look at different sides of the coin is really important. It's really valuable. I appreciate it. I got lots of notes, lots of ideas, lots of suggestions that I think we should continue to make part of the discussion moving forward. I appreciate more fully how important it is for us to stay connected, not just multi-generational, I think was the word you used. Not just younger people with older people, but also across ministries. I mean, we've had a conversation here where just in the past couple hours we've talked about not just science, technology, and innovation. We've talked about health, we've talked about sustainable development, we've talked about economics, we've talked about climate change and the environment, and all of them within the context of how do we make Belize better? How do we work together to make Belize a better place for us? This morning, Minister said that we want to be focused on the active engagement and the relentless advocacy for you all as the youth. And I really will leave today being energized by your energy. I'm happy to be a relentless advocate for you all because you guys got to take care of me in a few years. So I need you. I'm going to take care of you now, do what I can, and listen to you because soon I'm going to need y'all to listen to me, wheel me out to sun or something, right? So this was a really good conversation. I'm very grateful to all of you for your input. Thank you for the questions from our audience. And Over to you, Sadie.
Thank you.
Thank you, CEO Mejia. And thank you, Panel 2, for reminding us that technology, innovation, digital cooperation is at our fingertips. We just need to seize it and take the opportunity they offer. Now it's time for lunch. Is anyone hungry? I guess we could save the lunch, Mrs. Borland. Okay, so for lunch, we will be having it in the conference room. We will be escorted row by row. And please be seated by 1:20. Try to mingle, make new friends, and network, okay? Thank you so much for this morning.
Testing. Yeah. story.